If there's one country that is getting maximum criticism after the takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban, it's the United States of America. Was its strategy flawed? Could the pullout have been done in a more graded fashion? To talk about that, we are now joined by Bill Smullen, former Chief of Staff to the Secretary of State, Colin Powell. Mr. Smullen, that is my first question to you. Was it too hurried? Was it not well thought out? Do you agree with the criticism that the United States is facing that the pullout was too soon?
No, I don't agree that it was too soon. As a matter of fact, I have been an outspoken critic of our remaining in Afghanistan far too long. Once we achieved what we set out to do back in 2001, we should have left. And the reason we should have left is that the United States is not necessarily good at nation building. We called it reconstruction, but nation building. So here we are, nearly 20 years later, trying to figure out how to withdraw all of the people, not only Americans, but all of the people who helped us on the ground. I think there was a plan. However, no one anticipated that the Afghan army and the Afghan government would melt away as quickly as they did.
But why do you think that happened?
It happened because there was no will by the people, no will by the army, no will by the government to stand firm, to not allow the Taliban to take over the country. You have to be raised with a nationalistic spirit in order to do what had to be done. You need to believe that country comes before anything else, to include your own safety. I was in the military for 30 years, and I fought in Vietnam. And when you fight, you stay until the bitter end. You don't just throw down your arms, take off your uniform, and run away to a safe place. And many Afghan military jumped in vehicles and went across the border into Iran, went across the border into Uzbekistan. They didn't stand to fight. They were an army that did not have the will, did not have the leadership that should have been trained on them to stand firm and to resist the Taliban.
But Mr. Smullen, isn't that blaming the victim? In fact, what is being said of America is that, one, you left hurriedly, two, you did not give enough protection to the Afghan assets that you had, and three, if there is a lack of leadership in the Afghan army, whose fault is that?
Well, the fault is those people that we trained for some 19 years, excuse me, did not have not only the will to stand firm, but clearly they did not have confidence in themselves to defend themselves. Leadership comes from the very top. When the former Afghan president climbs into a plane with a few aides and his wife and goes off to a foreign land because he does not feel that he is going to do any further good, that is a signal. That was a signal to the Afghan military that if the boss can go, if the commander-in-chief can go, we better go too. That was a very, very bad signal to all involved.
But isn't he someone who was propped up by the United States? If he ran away, isn't it let down by the US as well?
Yeah, well, former President Ghani came to the United States just a few weeks back, sat in the Oval Office with the President Biden, and said, we expect your withdrawal. We encourage that. We accept the fact that you are no longer going to be in our country. For that to be said, we began the process of withdrawing equipment and military personnel, not ever anticipating that the Afghan army would not stand up to the fight. We could not have prevented that. We trained them for some 18 or 19 years. Can't help it if they won't do what we trained them to do. We gave them all of the support they needed, equipment, ammunition, all of the things that they needed, and they just ran away. I saw this happen in Vietnam, where I fought for 2 years of my life. The South Vietnamese army did the same thing when the North Vietnamese came across the border. They threw down their weapons and ran. And that's why Saigon fell. the conditions in Afghanistan this past 2 weeks are very, very similar to what happened in 1975 in Vietnam, in Saigon. And we should have learned from that. We never should have stayed in Afghanistan to begin with. And as I indicated, I have been a critic. I think we need to understand history. And history tells me that we went to Afghanistan in 2001 for two reasons. Number one, to put the Taliban on the run so that they could no longer provide a sanctuary for Osama bin Laden. Two, to find Osama bin Laden and either capture or kill him. Well, the Taliban ran, so we accomplished the first mission. Osama bin Laden ran into Tora Bora, the mountains there, to hide, and then eventually into Pakistan. When he was in Pakistan, we had no further reason to remain in Afghanistan, but we did. And we did because we felt guilty. We felt guilty because we had destabilized the country. And the unfortunate part is we're not good at reconstruction. We're not good at nation building. So we have had a 20-year history of doing the wrong thing. And for us now in 2021 to say, well, what could we have done better? My answer is we should have left when we had the opportunity, probably in 2002, when the mission had been accomplished to rout out the Taliban and Osama bin Laden.
President Joe Biden also made the same argument that basically it is the problem of the Afghan military, and that is the reason why the Taliban barely took a couple of weeks to take over all of Afghanistan. But doesn't that run counter to what we are actually seeing from Afghanistan today? At least for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the only people actually providing any sort of resistance are the Afghanistan armed forces, losing plenty of soldiers in the bargain.
It took the Taliban 11 days to take over the country. 11 days after 19 years of preparation to preclude that. I would say the fault is with the Afghan military, with the Afghan leadership. Excuse me, not with the United States. No one anticipated that they would melt, that they would disband, that they would run away. No one anticipated that. How can you anticipate that you have invested 18, 19 years in something that is going to be a failure? We couldn't.
But how can you be training a military and not anticipate what they are actually like? Is there a shortcoming in the training then?
We thought that they were going to be prepared. We gave them everything they needed except the will to stand tall. And if you don't have the will to resist and you run away, despite the fact that you have everything that you need to defend yourself, shame on you. Shame on you. We should be very disappointed and discouraged with the performance of the Afghan military and the leadership of the Afghan military. I never saw one Afghan general, one Afghan colonel standing on TV saying, we're here to fight. We're here to defend our nation. No one said that. So you can blame the United States, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of blame to go around. And I would first and foremost put the blame on the Afghan military that we prepared to do this very job, and they chose not to do so. Once again, you can't teach will. You can't teach a nationalistic spirit. There is no a nationalistic spirit in Afghanistan today. Yeah, there may be protests against the Taliban, but that does not mean necessarily that that is what is going to govern the future of Afghanistan.
Mr. Smullen, my final question to you is, there are some analysts who also say that perhaps it is the radicalism that prevented the Afghan military from putting up a stiffer resistance to the Taliban because there was an ideological kinship. Would you agree or disagree with that assessment?
Disagree. I don't see any ideological difference. When you're in the military, you have one purpose, and that is to defend your nation, to defend a cause, a purpose. And the radicalization started when the Taliban began to recruit Afghan boys, young men, to join them in their goal to occupy the nation. I am so discouraged and disappointed. You're pointing fingers, or there are many fingers being pointed at the United States. Sure, we didn't do everything right. That is for sure. But don't put the onus on the United States for the failure of the Afghan army to stand up for what they were trained to do, which is to fight, to fight.
All right. Strong words indeed, Mr. Bill Smullen. Thank you very much for speaking to us.